Hello, Learning Circles people. We're here without Brent. Brent said he was going to tell us all about CES because he attended CES a couple of weeks ago, or whenever that was, and had all kinds of ideas on trends for that could be applied to learning too. So we'll wait for him a few more minutes. If not, I'm going to have to knock at his door and kick his butt. Anyway, so we have Kingsley here with us, and he has something to tell us about a project that he's working on, which sounds really interesting. So I'll just let you speak.
Sure. So the hypothetical that I was given is how would you distribute e-learning content like Storyline or Captivate with a leaderboard so that you have the real-time stuff in a classroom with no internet access? So what I'm touring with now is I got a Raspberry Pi, and I'm going to set up a Node.js server on it with sales.js so that it becomes the Wi-Fi hotspot and the web server in the room. And then all the laptops in the room can connect to the Raspberry Pi. It will serve the games and act as the database for the games and the leaderboard and display. So the instructor would have one login, and they could display the leaderboard, and then all the students would be logging in and loading the games, watching the scores appear.
Oh, very nice.
I love that project that I'm on right now.
And that's for a classroom setting?
Yeah, it's for classroom setting.
Oh, that is very interesting. I have a lot of interest in that as well. Like for years, I've been following. Let me post a link here. Whoops. Well, the one laptop per child, of course, but there was I've been following these. I'm going to share the link later. Some technology that lets you, from one central computer, replicate that, like kind of in computing, right? But it's an open source version of it that I forgot the name now. And you actually get to have one laptop, one server, and then you replicate that into several ones from that box by just plugging in a monitor into that switch, right? And then you get that coupled with that technology that lets you actually monitor what's happening on each student's screen, so the teacher can potentially just inside that classroom provide watch, observe, provide custom feedback, and all that just from one central station, one computer multiplying into several ones, which is another good technology, I guess, that could support that thing. Whenever you don't have internet connection or anything like that, setting up your own cloud like that, it could come in handy too.
Yeah, I'd looked into it before for somebody that was looking for a solution at conferences that wanted to be able to hand somebody a tablet with forms and let them fill it out, and it would dump into their database. But again, as you know, at a conference, everybody's trying to jump on the Wi-Fi on the floor, and so the Wi-Fi is all shoddy. And so they wanted a way to guarantee that they would have that connection between the tablet and the database. So I toyed around with this idea for that before. And so when it came up, in this particular case, we're talking about folks that are at remote locations like Africa or someplace where they might not have great internet or no internet at all, but they still want to be able to track some scores and stuff. So it's kind of nice because I don't know if you've seen a Raspberry Pi, but it's like an itty-bitty little 35-dollar computer that you can build out.
Oh, very nice. That's really cool. And what would be the so that's your side project that you're doing just for fun?
Well, yeah, I mean, it might get turned into a project because we went back to the client because the client said, "Here's the problem," and we gave a couple of proposals. But as usual, I myself, I got all hung up into it, and I feel like I need to build it now just so I can see if it works or not. So yeah. Right now, it's my personal thing, but hopefully we'll be able to use it for an actual customer as well.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I found the project here. I knew it was iTalk, but I was spelling it with a K for whatever reason, I guess. This is what I'm talking about in chat there. iTalk with a C at the end instead of a K. So basically, yeah, it's an internal network or whatever. It lets you control student computers and all that kind of stuff. So it could come in handy when doing things like what I've just done recently with Training Mag was the conference was hosting a session where you have hands-on, like creating things on, using tools, and each participant is creating assets and stuff like that. So, of course, you can always come over their shoulders and observe and all, but that gives you another way to also jump in and help out. You know. All right, so I want to see what comes out of that project of yours, man. This should be fun.
Yeah, I think it could be used for a lot of things too. If you can for under $100 create it's not really a hotspot because you're not getting an access point, in a classroom and be able to share data and collect data into a database there. Later, take it back to your office, plug it in, download that data.
Mm-hmm.
I put the link to Raspberry Pi in there.
Very cool.
Another thing I got that's going on right now, that's kind of an open question I could use some help with, is 508 testing on mobile devices.
How?
Yeah,
Tell us how.
Well, Android and iOS both have screen readers built into them, but it's just recently come up. We had a client that was, interested in 508, and then they also wanted to work on mobile, and so then we got to thinking, well, does the 508 have to work on mobile? Turns out it probably should. So I've always struggled with 508 testing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very hard to test software that you don't use every day. I have a feeling folks that use a screen reader every day know all the little shortcuts. They have things that they do, to make it easier for them that we just wouldn't understand. We don't use it every day.
Cool. Yeah. Marvin here is a specialist in assistive technology. So I'm sure he could give you some very good pointers there. I don't have much experience in testing 508 and stuff like that on mobile devices at all. I don't. Probably not many of us do, right?
Yeah, I've never tested it on a mobile device. I have tried to test it on desktop. Even then, it's pretty hard to do.
Yeah. Okay, enlighten us here. Maybe join the well, you can't. You're in a meeting, right, Marvin? But 504. What do you mean about 504, and how it applies to mobile? We probably have to wait for him to type in.
Yeah, Google 504 compliance now. Let's see.
Really? I'm completely clueless on this one. So there 504. There's 508 in general, and then there's 504, which is for educational institutions. Then. Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
You learn something every day. So now you need to test for 504 as well, Kingsley.
Yeah. Well, hopefully Marvin can contact me later when he has more time to help me out.
Yeah, if you have any good accessibility links there, 504, 508, however many other 5s, 502 there are, send us a link there.
I think it's going to become more and more important, as e-learning progresses.
Yeah.
I know. In my world, I do a lot of web development stuff as well, and HTML5 has really taken a lot of steps to bake accessibility into it. The arrow tags, ARIA tags, you can add to almost anything in HTML5. So hoping the next round of tools we get from Articulate and Captivate and stuff will start incorporating that more too.
Yeah, and that's the mindset I have. It might be most likely is a wrong one. Is that as we're in this rapid design, rapid development world, you just assume that the tools that you have are going to support that natively. Especially now that we're moving more away from Flash and all that, you just assume, right, that it's the minimum compliance is met already. But there's way more than that, right, to being compliant with 508 and all. And not just compliance, but just supporting,
Hey,
how y'all doing? Can you hear me okay?
Hello. Yeah, we can.
Okay. So what you're looking at with 504, looking at 508 compliance, 504 compliance, 504 is the one that generally gets people because we're looking at the materials at that point. So as the institution, one of the things that we run into, and I've got folks over here in the lab, what they do is they prep books and all for students. So when we get into the e-learning realm of it, professors will think, oh, well, since we've got the book electronically through a website or whatever, the materials electronically, it's obviously going to be accessible because student can use screen reader, whatever. That's not the case. We're running into a situation now. I've got a student who is blind, who is accessing a site for a course, and the site is set up with 3 columns. His screen reader can access the right column and the left column, but not the central column. The middle column has uses Shockwave, so there's the big thing right there. There's our start for the assignments that the student's going to do. So for homework, quizzes, stuff like that, it all is in the center there in Shockwave. The problem becomes in just the design of the activity. So it's for the activity, the student has to be able to drag and drop different groups to categorize them. So, you know, nice activity, but the thing is what happens if you have somebody who's visually impaired? You know, the drag and drop, I can't do that on my screen. And even if I could have the screen reader use that, I couldn't do anything with it. So it's definitely a problem to where currently it doesn't fall back on the designers to offer a product that is 504 compliant, but you do have institutions who will start to ask for that more. So that can be something to where if you have, say, digital materials that you're presenting, making sure that those are accessible, because as universities and other training programs say, hey, we have to have that, what happens is that if you don't know or you don't have that, they simply just won't get your product.
Wow. I was really clueless on the 504 deal there.
Yep.
So
that's really the deal breaker because well, the way it's been working out is a lot of universities have been doing it themselves. So what we'll do is we'll have faculty buy stuff, and they'll say, well, you know, I have to use this product, so they'll go ahead, get it, push it out to the students. And then I'll see the students that are registered with my office, and we'll try to do fixes there. But if they're not registered with the office, they could still be out there with a disability, not able to access the material. It still becomes a thing that's it's more the university's burden at that point. But if you're trying to get the customer, it's a great way to be able to pull that customer in. Mm-hmm. I just saw one of my compatriots, Tom Seekert, pop in. He and I work on a procurement project here, and this is one of the things that we look at is the accessibility or inaccessibility in a lot of these things.
And is there overlap between 504, 508, and can you make something that works for both worlds?
You can. The key is to make sure when that you actually test this stuff, and that's where, again, you can have difficulty with testing on the mobile platform. On iOS, obviously, you can go ahead and do your testing with VoiceOver. On Android, TalkBack. I have some folks who love TalkBack. I have some folks who hate TalkBack. But the main thing is to make sure that you actually do the testing, and then if you have materials, go through and do the go through and do the extra work of making sure that any and all printed materials are, if you have to lock them up, you have them available for somebody who maybe can't use them locked up. So that if you do have an office that comes in and says, hey, your site is blocking this reader, do you have something, or do you have a version of material so that way the individual can get it? And making sure that, so you've got something that's either an HTML file or an OCR PDF that they can access, just so they can access the material.
Mm-hmm. So, and you mentioned, since we're on the accessibility track, right? Just impromptu here. You mentioned drag and drop, right? And I think one of the biggest things that instructional designers, developers ask all the time, or at least they struggle with that. A question is, to make something accessible, do I need to just strip away anything that is interactive fun, like drag and drop or click or hotspot this or scenarios and all that? Or is there a way to keep it interactive but still accessible?
You can make it interactive and accessible. What we did for that student with the drag and drop is we actually went through and changed it to be checkboxes and combo. While it's not the whole drag, while it's not the drag drop, it still allows what you want to do. What happens if you do something as simple as you close your eyes? Can you still do the activity? You know, if you can't close your eyes to do the activity, then what can I do in order to still be able to get that material? It's what really gets difficult is that you don't want to create two separate but equal, because you don't want to try to have two separate experiences that typically they don't work out to be equal. Because I'm going to have the labor of love that I put my energy and all into. I've made this one cool suite of activities where I can do this and I can do all these things. I can create all this, but then I have to make something which is the quote-unquote accessible version, which maybe is going to get some energy, but not all of the energy.
Well, normally it's just people resort to we have this interactivity, this animation, etc. And then for the accessible version, you have a PDF with stills and text of the same thing.
Right.
A lot of times.
But do you interpret the standards to say that you have to have equal, or does it just say that if there's text, you need to have audio? If there's audio, you need to have text. That's basically the spirit of it. If there's audio, you have to have text. If there's text, you have to have audio or at least access to it. In creating your PDF, what we've found actually from a lot of the publishers is they'll kick us out a PDF, but it's not even OCR'd, or it's OCR'd with a horrible engine. OCR being optical character recognition. So that's what allows a lot of screen readers, a lot of text-to-speech tools to actually work well with materials. We'll find that the files that we get are horrible. So we have to go through and OCR them again and do things like take a look at reading order, take a look at making sure that that's a big thing. If you've got somebody says, well, I'm just going to put this together as a PDF, but then they decide they want sidebars in the PDF, making sure that the central material is read before the sidebar, if that's the intent. A lot of that stuff doesn't happen, so you have to make sure that you go back, you look at this stuff, and that it makes sense.
Breaking up again.
Sorry, Marvin, we lost you a little bit there.
That's okay. Tom's got he's adding a point in here.
The Office of Civil Rights defines the requirements for any alternate access as follows. Must permit students with disability to receive all the educational benefits provided by the technology in an equally integrated manner and with substantially equivalent ease of use. So it doesn't really, that's where it's not super clear, because it doesn't really say it has to be the exact same experience. When I read this, I look at it and I say all the education benefits could be interpreted as they get the same information.
Yeah, can they pass the same test that everybody else?
And so this is where this becomes something that the universities typically struggle with, because when it comes to Office of Civil Rights complaints, those go to the universities. And that's where the interpretation becomes that of the Office of Civil Rights. Now, it might be that you set things up so that the students can get access to the information, but that's where you take a look at, again, what are your learning outcomes? And if I have this alternate activity that's set up, have I taken away anything from the learning outcomes? And as the designer, you might say, well, no, because I can kind of get this. But if there is something which is lost, then the answer could be, well, yeah, you haven't preserved those learning outcomes in an alternate format.
Yeah.
Did Brent make it do? So you learn, guy?
I don't think you can. Yeah, his audio and video is not working. What do you make of it, Kingsley? Especially now that you're working on that 508 project.
Well, I mean, it comes up all the time. It was just recently, I got it from 2 different channels, people asking about it at the same time. And it was just yesterday afternoon, so it was on my mind when I came in here. And I think it's tough because we want to be fair to everybody, but also we want to make engaging, interactive content. And if you can't, if you have to make the same content for everyone, then it's not going to work. How about colorblind folks? They're going to have a difficult time with a lot of things. So if you start taking into account everything, you're going to have a pretty dull course.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do everything because as soon as something new pops up, you're done, you're toast. But for looking at things like colorblind, okay, so suppose you have a graph and you're representing things with colors. Perhaps what you do is represent with colors and perhaps hatching. So that way you're doing more than just using color, you're using more than one means of being able to express that, to be able to show that. And again, you can still have interactive stuff, but it's a matter of, I guess, doing a little bit of thinking outside the box. It's not supposed to be something which is going, accessibility isn't supposed to be something which will kill creativity. It's supposed to be about making sure that everybody can have access, or as many people as possible can have access to this stuff. And even something as simple as, making sure that if you have videos, that those videos are closed captioned. One of the things that we ran into recently with a Title IX sexual assault training that our campus put together, or campus purchased rather, the developer used animated GIFs instead of using video for certain sections. Now the problem with that, they used audio and animated GIFs, which was kind of weird because we had a couple different files. But I can't caption that. If they would have used a little video clip, I can caption that and go with that.
I wish that they would release some clear, I don't want to say litmus test, but some clear examples of this is good, this is bad. But take the ambiguity out of it, because they're leaving it up to us. It's almost as bad as the tax code. We have to figure it out, and if we get it wrong, we're in trouble. And so I wish that they would say this, here's a black and white example of what you should do. Here's a black and white example of what not to do.
Yeah. and examples that actually preserve the creative aspect of the e-learning that you're creating, right? Not because when I do find examples of accessible content, people go the other way. It's like, this is amazing, and then you get something completely dumbed down, which is not the goal, right? So, do you know of anywhere we could go? Probably there's many, but we just haven't found any good ones yet, where you can find what Kingsley is describing, comparison and documentation.
It's hard. You're not going to find anything typically from like a federal or state entity, just because they don't want to call out somebody who's doing something bad.
But they can make their own.
Well,
Sorry.
That's true. As far as documents go, actually the Social Security Department has the best. They're the resource that we use for being able to take a look at what we should do as far as print stuff goes, or actual text stuff goes, and text accessibility. For audio and video, there's not a whole lot. What the best thing to do is that I've found is to work really closely with the university. That's what we've done, or with the agency. When we found the issues with the product that we had for Title IX training, we talked with the producer and went over what the issues were. And, we actually developed the workaround here based on what we could have access to. But we provided a lot of ideas as far as what could be done in order to make things they had that weren't accessible. So video is one of the big things. Video is really big with a lot of folks now for a lot of content. And just even considering something simple as if you're going to show a video if you have a video showing a process, you might have captions for the audio, but perhaps consider audio description for what's actually on the screen. Then all you have to do is just let people who want access to that audio description get access to that. Those folks, just like the folks who want access to captions, can get access to those captions. So that kind of goes more with a term or a concept called universal design, which is really big for looking at. It's big in education, a lot bigger in K-12. Higher ed, we're trying to work on it, put it together, but there's a lot of working with the institutions as well. Looks like Tom's got something here. Yeah, that's the thing. So there is also the Teach Act, which I guess that did get published in the past.
Do you think there's a way, and maybe this, I guess for everybody, do you think there would be a way for the community to develop a place to go, so we could post examples and ask experts, chime in, tell me if this is good, if this is not good, and then other folks could come look at that and see it there. So maybe as a community we could solve this problem, I guess.
There is an organization called IAAP, which is that's kind of a professional organization community, which was set up by more the private sector companies because of this type of thing. So that would be a good place to also be able to go. But yeah, you're right. If there was something, it's part of it is getting folks to be willing to kind of show their stuff which has been deemed bad.
Well, if it's done bad on purpose, here's all that could go wrong, or most of the things that could go wrong, and it's created that way, and then now make it better. The challenge is for you to make it better, and then we could see some good examples where the creativity is still preserved in the interaction, but it is.
And I wonder if we could get some volunteers from that are good with the tools, JAWS or whatever. Some volunteers to do their critiques of it, so that we could create something, post it. Volunteers could critique it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You would be surprised though. The tools are important, but the hardest part of it is the actual instructional design, figuring out how to make this thing work and work well and be able to encompass as many learners as possible. I mean, that's a big thing. One of the things that I run into a lot on my campus, and I'm guaranteeing you is going to be on most of the campuses out there, are folks who aren't necessarily blind, but folks who have reading disabilities. you have a lot of folks out there with learning disabilities that they're most likely going to be the majority of students on campuses who need support. And for them, even though they have digital access to it, a lot of times that's not enough. They can do they do like things like the drag and drop stuff, but for where they do have to be able to read text, that's where sometimes it helps to be able to have, if you've got audio built in, then be able to have audio built in, or be able to, with some of the simple tools that are available via browsers, via hardware already, allowing folks to be able to access that, so that way they can really access the content.
Are you familiar with authoring tools and Captivate, Articulate, and stuff like that, like Lectora?
Not as much as you guys are, definitely. Most of my work has been with the assistive technology side of it and trying to get things to work. Because typically what happens is I'm just kind of told, here's this thing, make this work for these individuals.
Because I love to pose a challenge to you too, would be to go into those major players, those major tools, and give us your opinion on what each tool gets right or wrong, etc. And I'm sure that even the product teams would love to get the feedback on what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong as far as accessibility goes. And I'm sure the whole community of instructional designers and developers out there would appreciate seeing something like that. More well documented too, and that could go hand in hand with Kingsley's challenge there of, before and after, or.
Excellent. It's almost like a look at how easily you can create accessible materials using the content creation tools.
Yeah, and outside and I mean like just off the shelf, without having to tinker with code or variables, all this kind of stuff, like. Natively, easily supported. What is there that we can do, or what is there that we should avoid to make things accessible within those tools when we're creating content?
Right. Yeah,
because then we're getting the lowest common denominator, because not many people would be able to program custom e-learning within those tools.
I'd be curious, and maybe folks could respond in the chat there, which tools they like to use for 508. Because most of my experience is with Storyline, as far as 508 goes. It works all right.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to like compare and contrast which is better. Storyline, Captivate, Lectora.
Yeah, for me it was when I was in technical training, I paid more attention to 508 compliance than I do now, probably, when I should pay more attention to that. But one of the things that I consider, and I remember always when I was using Captivate, for example, Captivate was, I think, the last interaction I remember with a tool where I really put in accessibility, and I went and followed all of the suggestions that are there for accessibility, is going in and putting media description, just like you're saying, what's happening on the screen. This is the description of this scene, of this this slide, and what's happening on there, with alternate captions and stuff like that. And Captivate makes it pretty easy to do that, to add alternate descriptions to things.
Yeah, in Storyline, you just right-click an object, you can put in the alt text.
Yeah.
You can change whether or not it's even displayed, because you can use the tab order to read things out and stuff. So you can in Storyline say, I don't want this to be shown for 508 accessibility, which is nice. But I think the biggest trouble in Storyline I always had a hard time figuring out was setting the tab order, because you wanted to go in a particular order.
Yeah.
And not always, it didn't always seem like I could control the order, but to be fair, I wasn't trying super hard, so maybe other people are better at it than I am.
You would be surprised. Something as simple as tab order can make or break it, because what ends up happening, bottom line, is when it comes to an office like comes to one of our offices, and I work in my university's services for students with disabilities office. When the materials come in, I'll check the sites, and we'll look at the VPAT, which is the basically the company's voluntary statement on their accessibility. Everybody says their stuff is either, they usually go one of two ways. Either, no, we're not accessible, but it's because they haven't tested, or yeah, we're accessible, but they haven't tested. So we'll go through and look, even something as simple as tab order. If I have students that are trying to go through and maybe they're trying to take a test and the tab order is way off, they'll let me know, we'll report back, and we'll tell folks, our recommendation is that you do not use this tool anymore, that you basically, as soon as contract is up or whatever, you abandon this ship. Talk to them first and see if they're willing to work on this. But if they're not, then you must abandon the ship, because we become open for federal problems. Because that law hits, the investigations by the Office of Civil Rights don't hit you guys, they hit us. All of the judgments and things that go through, they're not going against the content creators, they're going against the universities.
Many years ago, when I worked at a power company, utility company, they had mainframe stuff, and they hired some visually impaired folks for customer service. And the screen reader would read out to them, because on the mainframe they would draw boxes around stuff with asterisks. And so it would read out asterisk, 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 asterisk. But they had a way that they could go in and they could say, hey, if there's like 4 asterisks in a row, just ignore that line, kind of thing. So it was cool that the software is flexible enough to help them out.
Well, that's the thing, is that because there's enough inaccessible stuff, tools like JAWS have had to become super robust. But like something that I'm running into right now, something simple. So campus has just gone to Office 2016. We were prepping a document for a student, again, alternate arrangement for this. Actually, the student I was mentioning in the beginning that had to deal with the drag and drop issue, we set up a Word document which would allow the student to be able to have access to all of that stuff. The thing is that when we did a protected document, we set up a form. When we protected that document for forms, so that way he could tab right into the form fields to put in answers. Word 2016 on Windows kicks you right into read mode. Read mode has problems with JAWS. So right there, we need to find out, okay, what version is the student using at home? The student's using 2010, student's using 2013, we're cool. If the student's using 2016, we have to come up with a whole different workaround. That's not something which we would expect you guys to do, but that's something where, it goes back even further to where I contacted Microsoft and I said, hey, did you know that this is a thing? And they did not know.
Wow. So if it affects like major manufacturers like that, imagine the guy in the basement doing the e-learning, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm looking at your links now, and they have a lot of information there on those. One of those Lectora ones mentions something about drop-down menus. It never occurred to me that a drop-down menu's got to be quite a challenge for somebody that can't see the options.
Yeah.
Drop-down menu.
It's all the tool tips, things like that they give you. It's worth it to take time to fill a lot of that stuff, to fill all of that stuff in, because when you do, that can make the difference for somebody who has a problem with actually they're using a screen reader to read the material, or perhaps somebody who has a cognitive impairment, traumatic brain injury, what have you, and they need that extra bit of help to be able to get what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
I remember doing some training and just having to tab through every single button to know what the reader was saying. And I used JAWS, but you have to pay for that one, right? So not everybody has a license for that. What type of testing software would you recommend?
VoiceOver is good. NVDA. I'll see if I can get a link for that. NVDA is a free screen reader that's kind of up there with JAWS. Recently, it's been like a few years, but Microsoft went to a company called GW Micro and enabled folks who have Office on their computers to download their screen reader called Window Eyes for free. So Window Eyes is another one. But for those people who are Chrome users, Chromevox is getting better. So Chromevox becomes an issue or an option, and that's just turning that on within the accessibility features of Chrome. So there are a few free things out there. JAWS is still kind of the end-all, be-all. For the DOE and or not DOE, DOJ, DOD, and I believe also the NSA allow JAWS on their machines. So if they allow JAWS on their machines, that's kind of like you're a made man at that point. But still, just any testing that you can do, any testing, and even that. So you might test with 2 different tools, and you say, okay, this testing with 2 different tools is good. You don't say this is indeed compliant. This will indeed work. You can say we've tested it and it's worked in our tests. Just because if you have somebody who has they might have the perfect storm set where this is outside of what you guys can control, but there's basically 3 parts to the whole thing. There's the hardware that they're using, and there's a lot of folks out there that are using old hardware still. There's the software that they're using, to where if the software will work with their hardware, that's great. And then there's the material that they actually have. So accessibility kind of fits in those 3 areas. You do the best to control what you can control, and then the other part are just kind of, those become your uncontrollables, and at some point you kind of have to say, there's not a whole lot I can do about that. So if you have somebody running, and I saw folks out there that are running Windows XP, and they swear by their Windows XP machines, they might have issues with some sites with some builds, then, I don't expect you guys to go through and make changes for that. That becomes me as the institution. I have to figure out what I can do to try to help them get access.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. I think what you said is key. You don't say something is compliant. You say you've tried, you've tested it on this, and this, right? And you tried the best that you could to the best of your knowledge to do it. And then if anything does happen, then you probably readdress it, right? That's where iteration comes in, right?
Yep. And the disabilities community and most universities, even the feds, are they're really forgiving if you're trying to make things better. And that's the one thing which I keep telling the folks in my realm is, hey, you need to go back and talk to these companies and tell them what's going on, so that way they know where the issues are. You guys might not know how to fix them, but that conversation can at least be had to where a solution can be arrived at together. So, if I have a problem with your product, then it doesn't make sense for me just to say, in silence, well, just, forget this product, I don't care, I rage quit, flip the table, all of that. It makes more sense for me to reach out to you and say, hey, this is an issue that we're having. Is there something that, this is a solution that we are going to prepare. Is there something that you can do with this, or can we work with your designers to try to look at reimagining this? And typically people say, yeah. Typically people are welcome. They welcome that opportunity. So that's something which I really love about the instructional designer and about the e-learning community, is that there is that openness to make things better.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
Something you mentioned earlier, Enzo, about saying instead of saying you're fully compliant, saying that you will work within these. We had that. This is getting away from the 508 a little bit. We had that hit us recently because we said that we would work with Internet Explorer 11, but it turned out that the client's internal network was forcing Internet Explorer 11 into Internet Explorer 7 mode. So technically, it was Internet Explorer 11 that we were working with, but it was displaying the content in really Internet 7 mode, which was causing a lot of problems. So that what you mentioned just reminded me. There's a lot of places where you really have to clarify in technology exactly what it is you're promising to do, because it can come back and get you sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes, enterprise mode. Joseph in chat just mentioned it. Yeah. Thankfully, we were able to get them, their IT department just to make a quick change, but I don't think it's that easy for a lot of IT departments to make a change. A lot of times it's there for a reason. They have it in enterprise mode because there's something in their network that just won't support newer versions of IE, forcing Internet Explorer into that old mode.
Yeah, so many variables we can't control, right? Different readers, different technologies, different browsers, different authoring tools, and different needs even, right? I have a story of my own with regards to disability. Right? I'm deaf in my right ear, and like zero, I can hear zero out of it. And I released a training once. It was e-learning with narration. I did the narration. And I got it out there, and that's the first time ever I realized how it affected my design. Somebody mentioned to me, "Why is this recorded in mono? Why can I only hear it out of one ear?" I'm like, I don't feel the. Oh, that's why I don't see the problem. Because
Yes.
I did. To me, it sounded fine, but it wasn't working on this ear. It was just one. So,
maybe every once in a while you have to turn the headphones around.
yes. So I always have one useless headphone. So there are so many variables between the designer, the technology, and the person receiving it that you can't control, but you can always try your best and do your best, right?
Absolutely, but that's the biggest thing is, and when you do that, that effort does not go unnoticed. And people are generally, folks like me, as long as I know that I've got a company that I can work with, then I'm that's great. But if I've got somebody who gives me well, we'll look into that, but then that's that. I mean, there is a presentation alternative tool that I will not name, but is very popular, that has had accessibility issues noted on their website.
I think
Going
it's
back
a
to
safe area. You
going
can
back
say whatever
to
you want.
2000.
None of us
well,
are getting paid by any.
And so you may or may not be correct. But going all the way back to 2008, and you can see where they were saying, we're looking into this. This is important to us. We're looking into this. But the complaints kept rolling and rolling, and you would see schools on there, government groups on there saying, "This is great. We wish we could use this, but it is not accessible. Therefore, we can't." To where I say, if you're looking at if you're just motivated by money, those are all clients, customers walking away from your product, which you're saying is good, but it just has these issues. So that can dramatically affect your bottom line if you're interested in your bottom line.
That's true. Yeah, I was just thinking right before you mentioned that too on the desktop authoring tools. Captivate, Storyline, Lectora, all those that we know, many that we don't know, right? Give you a lot of alternatives for accessibility and all when you're authoring the content. But online tools normally are at fault with that. At least from my experience, animation software, alternative presentation software, they normally, whether they're all Flash or just don't offer anything, any captioning, nothing, no alternative descriptions or anything like that, that normally seems to be the case. Do you know any tools out there that you've seen that are cloud-based authoring tools that actually do a pretty good job at accessibility?
I think Adapt might.
Yeah.
Adapt.
I would, it can be a tough thing. There are a lot of companies out there that are putting out tools to where they can take your content and allow you to present it via your, on your platform with accessible controls. That's a lot. But some of it is just kind of looking. There are small companies that are seeing this and they're providing the fix. So then it just becomes something of, well, now I have to buy like this video player from this group over here, or I have to go through and get maybe this I have to use this particular presentation viewer in order to be able to get that. There's a lot of stuff again which is small, but it works. It's accessible. But again, it's these smaller companies that are wanting you to, buy their service because that's how they put food on the table.
Cool. Well, I think we'll have to leave the CES conversation for another day. Brent, he was going to take somebody, I forgot who, to the airport, and probably something happened on the way, traffic or something, hopefully. So, but this is a very enlightening conversation. There's always conversation within my team internally. We're always talking about compliance and have we thought about this? Is there guidelines for this tool that we're using, et cetera, and all that. So we're always actually talking about it. We confess that we don't know how to do it ideally. It's always a struggle, right? Depending on the tool and all those factors we talked about. But we're always talking about it and trying to do the best that we can. And it's just a matter of, broader community enabling everybody. I think things like the challenge that Kingsley just proposed of let's show before and after compliance and see that the creativity is still attained, documentation that you said you were going to share with us. I don't know how we could share that right now. So, but that kind of stuff would help a lot. Maybe as a comment on the YouTube video, once I post it onto YouTube, this chat, you could go in there. I'll send you a notification and post it in there, and as a reply on a tweet as well. If you have a link to a blog of yours where you aggregate all this information, important links, tools like Chromevox you just mentioned, and things like that, maybe a blog post you already have ready there, or publish one, send a link to us and we'll pass the word around. I think we need more enablement around that. There's more questions than there are answers.
There's also a Twitter hashtag chat that I'll participate in, which is full of folks who can definitely give a lot of input on this, and that's Access Chat. It's international, so you've got folks from all over the world who are chiming in and who are part of this, to where they definitely could help. It's the hashtag ASX chat that I put in the window there. But definitely, I would like to get some more folks in, because I'm a firm believer of my eyes are going to see what my eyes are going to see, and my experience is going to help me call out what I can see.
Yeah.
But if there's more, the more folks that I have looking at it, the better I can do. Something which I've even toyed around with is the idea of prepping a little focus group. I mean, we got students here. So we have students who use this technology, students who need this stuff. I can do my best to make it accessible, but if I can get students to come in and check it, then I can ask them, well, what do you think of this? How do you actually, and you'd be surprised, you can get a student focus group for like pizza and sodas. So if you're located near a major university, it's worth it. You just go ahead, spend some money on some pizzas and sodas, and talk with their disabled students group, and just put it out there to where students can sign up to be able to come in. They don't have to disclose anything about their disability, but they, you can just say we want people who use screen readers, people who use text to speech, people who maybe need closed captions, stuff like that, and let them go through content and see what they say.
Cool. That's cool. Within big corporations too, like I work at SAP, right? We could easily identify people that have disabilities as well, and ask them, even if they are not part of your team, just ask them.
Absolutely.
To test it for you. I'm sure they'd be glad to, like you're saying.
Well, gentlemen, I need to tap out. I've got somebody waiting for me. So it's been great. I will try to continue on the audio. Thanks a bunch.
We're actually going to close it now.
Okay.
But thank you. Thank you for joining us. And look for the recording and the follow-up on Twitter and YouTube.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll see you guys in a few weeks again. Thank you,
Right.
Kingsley.
Thanks.
If you do set up the challenge, send us the link.
Okay. I'll
Bye.
see what I can do.
Thank you all.